led a bipartisan coalition of senators to pass a resolution each Congress acknowledging the plight of the Baha'i community in Iran. And I want to note that Chairman Menendez and I, we worked together on a lot of issues. He and I are both very much in support of this. In doing this, I've carried on the work of former colleagues on both sides who've used their bully pulpit to condemn the Iranian government's persecution of the Baha'is every Congress since 1982. In fact, the House of Representatives passed their own resolution on this issue earlier this month. In my view, it is crucial, and I know Chairman Menendez feels strongly about this too, that the Senate pass this resolution and strongly condemn the repressive Iranian government. Over the past 13 weeks, the world has witnessed the Iranian government's violent repression of its own people in response to nationwide protests defending women's rights. It should come as no surprise to my colleagues that the Iranian government has a long history of repressing and targeting religious minorities, and in particular the Baha'i community. The Wyden family knows quite a bit about authoritarian regimes targeting and persecuting individuals on the basis of religion. I know the distinguished President of the Senate has known several Wydens over the years who've lived in his home state and has heard the stories about how we fled the Nazis, our family. Not all got out. We lost family at Theresienstadt and other horrors. So we know a lot about these authoritarian regimes, and today the Baha'i community continues to face harassment, violence, dehumanization, and persecution in all forms. Baha'is in Iran are subject to arbitrary arrest and imprisonment, and they are denied access to higher education and certain occupations. My resolution, which has long had bipartisan support, condemns the government of Iran's state-sanctioned persecution of the Baha'i community and its continued violation of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, the International Covenant of Civil and Political Rights, and the International Covenant on Economic, Social, and Cultural Rights. The resolution further calls on the Iranian government to release all people detained or imprisoned solely on account of their religion and their campaign of hate against the Baha'is, and reverse policies that deny Baha'is and other religious minorities equal opportunities, freedoms, and rights under the law. My resolution calls on the Biden administration to condemn these human rights violations, push for the release of religious prisoners, and use its authorities to impose sanctions against those responsible for these deplorable human rights. And I want to close again, Mr. President, by emphasizing that Chairman Menendez and I have a history of working together on this. Both of us have been strong supporters of the Baha'is and documenting these human rights issues, and at the end of the Congress you have all kinds of challenges with respect to the process, and I respect his views very much. So I ask unanimous consent that the Foreign Relations Committee be discharged from further consideration and the Senate now proceed to S-Res 183. The resolution be agreed to, the preamble be agreed to, and that the motions to reconsider be considered made and laid upon the table.
Is there objection?
Mr. President.
Senator from New Jersey.
Mr. President, reserving the right to object, let me first praise Senator Wyden for his continuing effort on behalf of the Baha'i. As he's mentioned, we've worked together on this in the past. I'm strongly supportive. I'm in complete agreement with what Senator Wyden wants to do in terms of shining a spotlight on the abuses that the Baha'i face at the hands of the Iranian regime and taking steps to protect that community. I believe that religious freedom and support for religious minorities is a fundamental right, one we have to defend both at home and abroad. And for decades, Iran has persecuted religious minorities, ethnic minorities, women, as we have seen most poignantly of late, and anyone who does not toe the regime's line. And Senator Wyden's resolution addresses an important issue. My challenge here is that we have a flood of requests to release the committee both of resolutions and legislation, including of members of the committee. We have said no in order to preserve the opportunity to have the imprint of the committee's process on any given resolution or piece of legislation. And in order to preserve that, we ultimately have a challenge. If we were to allow this to happen at this point, there would be an enormous number. So what I can commit to the senator is that at the very beginning of this new session, that the committee will take up your resolution. I'll work with the ranking member because we have comedy, but that we'll take up the resolution, look to pass it out, and then work with you to make sure it passes through the floor.
Yield very briefly.
Sure.
I thank my colleague, and I understand full well because between the Foreign Relations Committee and the Finance Committee, we have these kinds of challenges very, very frequently. And I very much appreciate working with my colleague and look forward to moving this early next year.
And because of that, I object at this point.
Objection is heard.